At the Modern Regional Championship qualifier, we interviewed Victor, a local player from Cincinnati, Ohio, competing with a Temur Creativity deck that he won with in the last RCQ season. Let's see how this 3-color deck works.
Basically, it's a tournament where all the best players in the world from different countries and everything come in the same room and play the game that we all love.
I am Jace Belair.
And I am Stoneforge Mystic.
It's just a really amazing game.
It's just mind-boggling to even think about. I guess the rest is history.
The games are just always interesting and unique. The gameplay it's very high stress, but they're so dense and you gotta think through so many various decision trees and all that. And it's just, every game feels somewhat unique, even though there are sort of like these patterns that you can sort of identify and you can leverage that skill. I would just break it down to the gameplay. The gameplay's fun. Indomitable Creativity, there's a bunch of various different versions of it, but functionally it's a deck where you're playing 4 creatures, and those 4 creatures are Archon of Cruelty. Some lists will play like Emrakul and Sarah's Emissary, but then you play a bunch of non-creature token generators that you can then cast your creativity on, which will then kind of polymorph them, for some of the old school players, polymorph them into an Archon of Creativity, which has a overwhelmingly powerful enter the battlefield trigger, and you just kind of leverage that trigger and hopefully subsequent attack steps to kill your opponent very quickly. I would describe it as almost like a control deck with a 1-card combo finish, being that Indomitable Creativity. And the most sort of reliable token generators are these lands known as Dwarven Mine, which is a land that if you have 3 other mountains when it enters the battlefield, you get to create a 1/1 dwarf token. So those dwarfs are oftentimes being sacrificed to the creativity to then be turned into Archons. So there is a sort of kind of level 0 deck construction where you want to play almost entirely mountains, so that way you can reliably have your Dwarven Mine make a dwarf token on turn 3. Indomitable Creativity says it's red, 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 X. I believe it's destroy X creatures. Its controller starts revealing cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card that shares a type with that. I'm pretty sure it might just specify only creatures, but so you target your dwarf tokens, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're really lucky, and then you destroy all those, and then you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an Archon of Cruelty. Put that into play, get your trigger, profit. So the Archon trigger is, it enters the battlefield or attacks, your opponent loses 3, I'll gain 3. You discard a card, I draw a card. So even if they answer the Archon, you get just sickening value just by you drawing a card, making them discard a card, and whittling, and they sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. So you're working away at their board, and you just presented this 6/6 flyer. If they answer that, ideally you just do it again, and if they answer that, you always got your Wrenn and Six ultimate, which can win a game fairly easily, especially when you have like lightning bolts in your deck, so you can just ultimate your Wrenn and Six, bolt you a couple times, that's game, which can go a little bit faster if you happen to be triggering those Archons. So, I mean, Archon just has a card, if they don't answer it immediately, the game's just over, because you're gonna swing at them, get that trigger again, and you've just got a 6/6 flyer. So, the deck, if you're able to do the thing, does not struggle to win at all. So, the only creatures I'm playing in the main deck are actually 3 Archons of Cruelty, which is somewhat atypical. Most lists will play 4. I'm actually just trying 3 today, and it's worked out fine for me. Maybe a little bit of confirmation bias. And in the sideboard, you can play some number of creatures. I'm actually playing 1 Sundering Titan in the sideboard, which is, it enters the battlefield and you can destroy 1 of each basic land type. And my thinking behind that was, Leyline Binding is a new card, it's very popular. All these people are playing, like, Blue-White Control just happens to be playing some Triomes, so they can be a 5-color deck for that Leyline Binding. So I figure in these grindier matchups, in these 4-color, 5-color decks, you can bring in that Sundering Titan as another creativity target that can really do some work. So in terms of interaction, I'm playing 4 Spell Pierces, 4 Lightning Bolts, 4 Fire Ices, and 2 Mana Leaks, and 1 Unholy Heat. So this slew of interaction, both for stuff on the battlefield as well as on the stack. Cover your bases, interact with your opponent a little bit, combo. I would say the more kind of proactive cards the deck plays is something like, I got 4 Wrenn and Sixes and 4 Fable of the Mirror Breakers. I don't think I need to explain to people why Wrenn and Six is so good. And Fable of the Mirror Breaker provides you with tokens, it provides you with filtering, so you can actually kind of discard some of those lands that you're maybe a little bit flooded with because of your Wrenn and Six. And then the backside as well, being another creature to creativity, as well as immensely powerful if you actually have an Archon in play and you're fortunate enough to be able to create a copy of that. Some of the kind of more miscellaneous cards is I'm playing some number of Explorers, playing 2 of those, which is just more for your combo matchups. You be a little bit faster, you know, you turn 2, play your Explore, get 2 lands down, and then that way on turn 3, you can Creativity a little bit ahead of schedule. As well as some Prismari commands, which are kind of general sort of interaction, but also produce tokens and a little bit of filtering. And then aside that, just a whole bunch of lands. The mana base is, I want to say it's 12 fetches. Pretty much every other land in the deck is some mountain, whether that be a Steambench, whether that be a Stomping Ground, whether that be some number of Triomes. Every base or every land has to have that mountain subtype for your Dwarven Mines. The only exception to that is I'm actually playing 2 main deck Boseiju who endures, just as sort of a concession to Blood Moon being a little bit popular in the format, because Blood Moon is very good against your deck, which doesn't seem like it would be because you're playing a whole bunch of mountains, but it turns off your Dwarven Mine. So today I'm kind of focused a little bit on everything. I would say I guess I'm not narrowly targeting anything, just very generic sort of stuff. So I'm playing like stuff like Flusterstorm, which, you know, if you play against counter spells, Flusterstorm's going to be good. Also has the added benefit of being good against the Cascade decks. Playing some Dress Downs being good against Urza Saga, which I've just found is like locally quite a popular card, so I'd like to be a little bit more prepared for those sorts of matchups and that card specifically. I got a lot of various green cards, whether that be Veil of Summer, great against black decks, as well as being very good against the card Orvar, which is picking up a lot of popularity as being a kind of foil to Archon of Cruelty. Playing Turn the Earth, a little bit of Graveyard Hate, a little bit of Burn Hate, which is valuable. Playing 1 Weather the Storm, just as explicit Burn Hate. That's like my very narrowly focused Burn Hate card. Turn the Earth also doing some work in that matchup. And a 3rd Boseiju for when I'm playing against those artifact decks and I really want to make sure I have access to that card. I would say, I mean, most kind of mid-range decks I'm pretty happy to sit across from, whether that be Jund or Blue-White or 4-color, just because you kind of are doing similar things. You're a little bit grindy with your Wrenn and Sixes. You got a little bit of interaction. One of the big problems is most of your lands cost life when they enter the battlefield, whether that be your shocks or your abundance of fetches. So burn, just putting the pressure on early, being able to actually kill your dwarves, especially in response to your creativity, which can fizzle it. Those really quick linear decks can really kind of put the screws on creativity. I would almost, ironically enough, describe it somewhat similarly to a deck like Yawgmoth, which you would think those decks are not similar at all, but they're both these mid-range decks with this combo game plan, and that's really kind of what speaks to me as a Magic player, is being able to grind out a game if I need to, but also having that, you know, sort of I win button. You know, I was a big fan of Splinter Twin as well back in the day, so naturally I think this deck kind of aligns a little bit with that sort of play style.
That's it for this episode. We'd like to thank Victor for sharing his deck. He made it all the way to the top 4, but unfortunately did not take the crown. It's still early, so we're sure Victor will pick up that win before the season ends. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be having more deck techs and interviews in the future, so please subscribe to the channel. Hope to see you again. Thanks for watching.